Hello, citizens of
PlayStation.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world.
Ridge Racer!
This is living.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 3 of latest PS5. I'm your host Sonny Sangera and I'm joined by Mr. Tech Wizard himself, Alex Sylvester. How you doing?
What's up, people? Very good. How's it going?
This is an episode you wanted to talk about and we were going to do it last week, and I think you were half gutted, half excited last week because it was the DualSense, but you didn't get to talk about the component you wanted to, which is the SSD, the Solid State Drive, which is what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, how you been?
I've been good, man. I've been alright, enjoying this lockdown. Got some time to play some games. I managed to get Hellblade on the Switch, so I gave that a bit of a run. And even though it doesn't look as beautiful as it does on the PS4, it still runs really well on the Switch, so good for them, man.
Excellent.
How about yourself?
Mate, I have... it's weird. I was like, right, this is a time to clear the backlog. You know, so I played the Outer Worlds, finished that. I got Murdered Soul Suspect, which is a really linear, narrative-driven game, platinum that. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to dust off the VR.
Yeah.
So, dusted off the VR, re-downloaded everything just to make sure, playing PSVR. And, oh man, so I played... So I want to tell you all listeners, if you've got PSVR, download a demo, if you don't already have the game, called The Persistence.
The Persistence.
So it's called The Persistence. It's a PSVR game. It's story-driven. It's set on a space station. And it's so cool. Like, you start the game. I took a screenshot and I forgot to send it to you. You start the game. And the only thing, like the menu screen freaks you out because you're like, fucking, it's interstellar. You're right in front of a black hole. And you're like, oh shit, and that's kind of freaking me out. And then, so basically, the way the story's gone from the demo, it's first person. It's got loads of comfort control options. So if you don't get sick, you can play it like a proper first person shooter with a pad. If you do, you can do it in the 45 or 90-degree angle turns. So comfort options are great. Graphics are really good as well. And the story is, you died. And this is set in the future, so your consciousness, think Altered Carbon, it can be put into another skin.
Okay, nice.
And you've got to find out what happened on this space station, and obviously the space station's AI is telling you like what to do and what happened. She was like, the only problem is the machine is printing skins with no mind to it, so it gives you a rational reason why you have enemies on there, and you're like, oh, that's cool. But the thing here is, if you die, you reprint back in this safe room, but because you're near a black hole, which is a singularity, because you die, the black hole changes the space station's layout.
Okay.
So, because it messes with time, it messes with physics, everything like that, and because you've reset yourself, the black hole has reset the area that you're in, and it's cool. It's proper freaky as hell, man. It is really, really freaky, but really enjoying it. Played that. Gonna play quite a bit more VR, I think. Really, before I was waiting for The Last of Us, dude.
Yeah, but everybody was.
We all were.
It was like a blue Christmas.
I said to myself, I'll just play sports games and racing games. I won't play any story-driven games until Last of Us. Now Last of Us is on the shelf indefinitely. I was like, right, get me my backlog, Yeah. Oh, and I did play a game called Erica, which is it's really cool. It's basically a real film, and you choose the decisions and everything that are done in the film. Yeah. But you have to download the companion app and do all the animations on the phone and stuff. It's so cool, man. It's cool. It's only about an hour and a half long, but again, it's what Sony's really pioneered on the PS4. Just different ways to play games.
Experiences, I like it.
Exactly, that's it. And it is a really good experience. But I tell you what's going to make great experiences, Alex. A very fast SSD.
Oh, shit.
And obviously, the last 2 weeks,
Yeah,
we always seem to be talking about revolution over evolution, and if there was
yeah,
one thing that really symbolized that quote,
yeah.
it's that solid state drive.
Solid state.
So
Yeah.
before we just break it down a little bit, just what was your initial thoughts when obviously they laid out what the SSD could do?
What the SSD could do, I thought that it's going to be that we're witnessing a revolution in terms of story, in terms of gameplay, in terms of thought process, in terms of game structure. It's just going to change everything on its head and really give developers room to create instead of just going through that normal cookie cutter style of game. They can come up with something completely random that we've never even thought of or even can conceive. So that's what I'm looking forward to seeing, like what innovative steps they're going to take to bring the customers in.
Well,
How about yourself?
listeners, well, I mean, I say same as you do. You took the
Mm,
words right out of my mouth. And for listeners who may be thinking, what's the big deal about it? You have to understand that this solid state drive is the same impact as to when a hard drives went into the machine, and it's massive, And the way they got to the SSD was it Mark Cerny said himself. They went around to developers to ask what do they want in a new machine, what
yeah,
ideas do you have? And he said it. Every single person said to Sony, we know it's not possible, but could we have an SSD? So
yeah,
obviously they complied, and it wasn't just external developers. Sony have, in regards to a first party lineup that pump up the amount of volume of games and different games that Sony do, they have such a high esteem of developers, and they all said the same thing. We need
yeah,
that game changer, and that game
yeah.
changer is the solid state drive. You know,
It's like a wish list, really, isn't it?
it is definitely. Well, honestly,
Yeah,
as we go through the weeks, it seems like the PS5 is ticking off everything developers want. That
yeah.
it's amazing. But to give you guys an idea, the PS4 takes around 20 seconds to load a gigabyte of data in.
Mhm.
So think Spider-Man cutscenes on this tube. Think about really smart level design, like in God of War. Yeah, it's all taken in a single shot. The camera never fades to black. But the trick
Mm,
that they do in between sections is when Kratos has to go through a tight gap, or he kneels down, and as he's doing that, and you're not controlling it because he's moving, it's loading that gigabytes of data ahead of him,
yeah,
isn't it? So I mean that's pretty fast when you think about it. But then you look
pretty
at
fast.
the 1 gigabyte 20 seconds, and you look at the PS5's uh, SSD 5 gigabyte bandwidth. It can do 2 gigabytes in 0.27 seconds. So almost
Wow.
100 times faster than the PS4.
Yeah, yeah. Freaking amazing.
It's unbelievable. And listeners, to make it easier for you to understand, um, imagine you're playing GTA 5 and you're driving down a road really fast and you see the buildings popping up and the textures popping up, or if you're playing a first person shooter and you're turning around really quick and you can see like the rock textures pop up at you, or Spider-Man where you feel like you can go faster when you're free diving down, but he hits a certain speed.
Yeah,
That is all down to what the bandwidth of the hard drive and the memory can do. A game can only move as fast as the hard drive will allow it to move, to how fast it
yeah,
can load textures. And that was that first demo, was it? That first video
yeah.
where they showed the Spider-Man side-by-side comparisons. What did
Right, yeah.
you think when you saw the PS5 Spider-Man, like, just fly
Well,
through?
the developer kit. I guess seeing that work so smoothly. I mean, that was just an introductory look at what we could potentially see. And I think what many people kind of missed was that not only could you see the objects in the background being rendered pretty much in real time, there was also Spider-Man moving even faster than he would have done on the PS4 version. And that's because, again, the bottlenecks, we're getting to an age now where bottlenecks are going to be a thing in the past, especially with this generation. And most people think, yeah, we take it for granted when Spider-Man's, for example, falling, or running as fast as we can. We just think, okay, well, that looks really cool, looks really smooth. He's falling. but that's actually bottlenecked by the processing power. So they can only show him falling at a certain rate because they've still got to load up all the different textures as he's getting closer to the cars, as he's getting closer to the ground. All that has to be processed. But when you see how they're now going to be introducing the solid state and they're going to have so much more access to memory, we're going to be seeing an even more realistic impression of what it would actually feel like if somebody was to be falling. So it's going to be pretty much unnoticeable, but the immersion is, but then suddenly, as soon as you're playing the game, you're going to feel this type of immersion, and that's what they're working on, and that's partly what the solid state is going to enable users to experience. So you'll just suddenly start playing the game, you think, wow, it feels a lot more real now, and that's again going to be because of the solid state ability. So yeah, so I was impressed, and I'm sure, as with most people were. I mean, but that was just like the tip of the iceberg, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they touted other numbers, like the PS4 hard disk drive bandwidth 50 to 100 megabytes, PS5 5 gigabytes at least, but it topped in at 5.5. Seek time, we'll get into seeks in a bit. 2 to 50 milliseconds. PS5 is instantaneous, and as we mentioned before, the aforementioned load time 1 gigabyte in 20 seconds for PS4, 2 gigabytes in 0.27 seconds, which is 100 times faster. Sorry, I'm drinking Pepsi at the same time, so I'm burping like crazy.
Yeah, I got a bit of ginger ale on the side.
But I mean, when we talk about the SSD itself, it's not just that they're using. I mean, Xbox is using a solid state drive as well, but it seems like Sony and they topped up their speed at 2.8 gigabytes. That's what the Series X is doing. So when you consider that the PS5 is ridiculously more faster than that, you can see what Sony have done. When the Wired article came out initially 11 months ago, Cerny was kind of laughed at when he said, we're going to make an SSD faster than anything on the market. And everyone was like, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. And then you see the diagram that he did in the road to PS4, that the SSD, there's a custom flash controller in there, and it's not just, and you mentioned bottlenecks, and this is a big thing because there are a lot of bottlenecks that you get in, where the memory, you want to access it all, but it has to go through a funnel, really,
Yeah.
And you look at like the main custom chip on the PS5, it's got its own dedicated cache scrubbers, Kraken decompression, dedicated DMA controllers, 2 I/O processors, on-chip RAM, and coherency engine. So everything, they've thought about everything that could potentially bottleneck the memory. Sony has thought about it and worked their way around it. So effectively, what they're saying is there's no such thing as a bottleneck on this SSD or this PS5. No. So listeners, you can forget about those 45-second Bloodborne loads. Or I mean, God of War, it was all in one take, but it was a ridiculous load time to start with.
You can tell what a load, yeah.
At the beginning, they always said it, no load times. There were smart tricks to it, the winding levels, and that what you said at the beginning, developer freedom, create the map the way you want to create it. Uncharted is seen, and Last of Us, both of them Naughty Dog games. You can see the you come into a big section, you do it, and then it always bottlenecks and funnels into a small section that connects to the next section. I mean, can you imagine the creative freedom that a Naughty Dog or a Santa Monica or anyone are going to have with this new solid state drive?
Yeah, I mean, even when you're watching, when you go into like a cutscene, I mean, you will have the ability to almost pan around anywhere. You don't really have to be just there. With its set camera angles and set timing, you should be able to have freedom to go wherever you choose. But I think in terms of the bottleneck, we're eradicating bottlenecks as far as we can see it. Let's say the bottleneck's at the horizon and we're pretty much getting there. But that as soon as the PS5 drops and developers start wetting themselves over it and they start throwing out all their ideas about it, we may see a new horizon in terms of bottlenecks. We may now see a new type of bottleneck, which is going to be insane to even think of.
Well, he said it in the road to PS4. He said the only problem we're having at the moment is everything is moving so fast. We may actually have to slow it down to slow the transition down deliberately because the user isn't used to it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you said it there. It's like the games are going to get so much more. Well, they're not going to get bigger in terms of file size, but they're going to become so much more complicated. You
Yeah.
know, with animations being the biggest thing, ray tracing is going to just absolutely rinse on memory. You know,
Yeah.
and it's crazy, but you know
Yeah.
the fact that he says that it's moving so fast that we may have to deliberately slow it down is the funniest thing I've ever heard. You know, it's unbelievable.
I was just thinking. I was just thinking, how can they even push it? What could create a new bottleneck? You know, and I was just thinking, if, all right, look at this scenario: you're playing like Spider-Man or even God of War, and like everybody can choose. Imagine if it's like a massive multiplayer game, and everybody's in the same city or in the same world, and they're just playing pretty much side by side, enjoying, their own version or their own slice of the pie, all being slightly different to what you're playing, and
Well,
somehow it kind of,
I mean, to give you an idea as well,
yeah,
some of the things he said in the Road to PS4, he said
yeah.
audio takes up memory. It doesn't on the PS5 because it has its own dedicated chip in the
Yeah,
Tempest
yeah.
engine. You know, ray tracing, it's hardware accelerated. It has its own chip. You know,
Hmm.
everything is running separate. It's like they've sat down and they've really thought, if we're going to implement an SSD, we're going to implement it properly, you know, and really go to work on it. I mean, the thing that excites me the most is the SSD objectives that they set. You know, that Sony's targets for PS5 and the SSD was ultra fast boost, no
Yeah.
load screens, ultra high speed streaming, deduplicate game data, and no long patch installs. Now, the deduplicate game data is a big one because you just said it there. Like Spider-Man, he said
Hmm.
it was a 1.3 megabyte sized bin that
Hmm.
they had in the game. But when they put the file into the game, it was over a gig in size because it was duplicated over 100
Hmm.
times across the city because
Yeah,
they had
yeah,
to do that because the hard drive is too slow to find that one bin. So they had to
yeah.
keep putting it in so many different places. Whereas with this, you look at file sizes, you know, the game, people complain that games are 100 gig. Final Fantasy 7, 100 gigabyte game. But that's because of the amount of data they have to reuse over and over again. Whereas the PS5, you don't need to do that. You can find it. No seek times.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Well, I mean, yeah, it would be there'll still be seat times, but it'll be a blink of an eye. And yeah, they won't need to. There'll be less redundancies in terms of data, so they can be a lot more efficient with the game file sizes.
Mm.
But yeah, like you said, as soon as it's loaded, nobody needs to worry about it. That's it. It's already in the memory, and they can just continue on with the game. But it'd be interesting to see exactly what other things, as you mentioned with the audio, how they're actually going to incorporate that into the whole new environment now, especially with the amount of memory that they have.
Mm.
But yeah, I think it's all in the developers' hands now. It's going to be interesting to see what they're actually working on now. I mean, we're getting pieces of information, but right now they're getting their chances to really explore some really wacky ideas. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do.
I think the cool thing as well that Sony have done is obviously they're using an M2 drive. Is
Hmm.
they've said it themselves, the option that there is expandability on there. You can use your
Oh, yeah.
M2 drive, but wait, let
Oh,
us
yeah.
test it, let us tell you, because current PC M2 drives, they run with, two channels, two reads on there,
Yeah.
whereas the PS5 SSD runs six. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous. They can read six
Yeah.
different things, like. But
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah,
it's
we're,
cool
we're
to
going to have
like.
to
It's
wait.
nice to have that
That's it.
option, though, isn't it? That the fact that once that they're able to test it, they'll be able to say, "Yeah, look, this hard drive works. This hard drive works." Whereas Microsoft have gone down the route of using proprietary memory cards in a way.
Mhm.
With Seagate, which is it's going to cost a bomb.
It will cost a bomb, but that's the only way they can assure performance. So, and I guess Sony's kind of dancing with that as well. But I mean, are we really going to need any more data initially anyway? You know what I mean? Hopefully that should give other third-party companies enough time to get things ironed out. I mean, we're not seeing anything like this on the market, in the foreseeable future. But yeah, we will start to see things creep up maybe in the next, 12 to 18 months' time. So, by that time, obviously, there should be enough users thinking, okay, then, yeah, I may want to expand my memory base. But as you mentioned before, because of the redundancies now are going to be a lot lower. Essentially games are going to be smaller. So maybe when they really start to unleash the true power of the PS5, that's when we're going to start to see the memory potentially creep back up again, and that's when people will be purchasing the third-party hard drives. But yeah, it's only time can tell. Only time can tell.
Listeners, if you don't, you should be excited about this solid state drive. It's absolutely
Yeah.
stunning. It is the real biggest game changer this generation, and Sony decided that if they're going to do it, they're going to do it like the Matrix. This is the biggest revolution there is, and I can't wait to talk about it more when more news comes out on there. But I hear you got some questions from the listeners for us, Alex.
Yes, apparently I do. So we have one question from, let me just pull it up, from Alan274. Yeah, and he asks, what do you think about the Bloomberg news that Sony will release less machines at launch than the PS4? I'll throw that over to you.
I wasn't surprised because I look at the tech. I mean, a few things. I knew that you look at the tech that's being used in this compared to the PS4. It's going to take longer to manufacture. I knew that it would never. And the PS4 was ridiculous. Like the amount of machines that were available, and they still sold out, was insane. But I think about 8-9 months ago, when you noticed Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Apple, Samsung all fighting over the same, silicon, same components, same minerals for their machines and stuff, you knew that, okay, this is going to be a struggle. Now you add on to the top, obviously, this global pandemic. I think the PS4 launched with 7.5 million machines in the first quarter, or the first two quarters, up until from launch till March 31st. And they're saying that I honestly thought the PS5 would probably launch half of that. But they're saying, obviously, 4 to 5 million, which is 2.5 million less. I think still a good number. I think the price and the adaptation won't be as fast as PS4. I think everybody was desperate. PS4 was a great price. Xbox had already shot themselves in the foot by this point. There'll be much more competition this time round. But I think the only thing to prepare yourself for is it's a simultaneous global launch with Japan, EU, and America will be the key priority, the key market for them. So yeah, if you see the pre-orders, I'm going to pre-order two, one from one outlet, one from the other outlet, just to make sure I get one on launch. So
yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be rushing that as soon as they announce it. And I think that's going to work really well for their marketing. The scarcity of it is already going to make people want it even more, isn't it? So yeah, it's definitely going to be one of the hot properties of the year.
One thing we joked about is Sony know there's going to be a low market, so a smart move for them would be PS4. I think they're going to drop it to either $199 permanently or go even cheaper, and I think they'll want to get people in on PlayStation Plus subscriptions or PlayStation Now, and then when they're ready the following year, when the stock's there to upgrade, it will be, I'm going to PS5. So I actually think you'll see a really big end of year holiday number for PS4 as well.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
Yeah, true. We could definitely see that. $199. I guess they could make that now, but I think they'd still want to kind of cream it. But another thing was the price range as well. I mean, what do you think? I mean, they're talking about what, maybe £499. No, sorry, no. Yeah, 499, or even 550. But I heard there's also talks that Xbox will probably try to match the price as well.
Yeah, I think you're looking at the same. I think they're both going to go same. I actually think Microsoft will try and go cheaper regardless. I think they'll wait.
They'll go cheaper.
And I think they'll try and go cheaper, or they'll go same price and bundle everything with Halo, which would be a really smart move.
For everything, yeah.
It'd be super smart. You know what I mean? But I think, I mean, if you had asked me this before, and we have spoke about it before, loads of reports in that, I think $499 is the minimum. I think $599. They won't go higher than that. So I'm probably saying $499 or $599 bundled with a game.
Bundled, yeah, okay. I'm gonna go with maybe $550. Yeah, 549.99. Yeah, right in the middle. It just sounds like an alright price. It's a bit more of a commitment, but they know what they're going in for. And as you mentioned, Halo. We have another question from Dimitri, who asks, "What does Sony need to do to combat Xbox's launch of Halo series for the Series X?"
What do you think?
Well, I think they've already got, a couple of games in the can, which will easily knock off Halo's potential platform. Obviously, we've got Lu 2, Last of Us 2. So as soon as that drops, if that's that, obviously we're going to be looking at a cross-platform game. That'll be a great addition to the lineup. I mean, from what I know, that's all we've heard. That's what we've
I
heard in
know
terms of the game.
Sony have been so tight-lipped on games. Nobody know. I mean,
Yeah.
the interesting thing is, could these machines go back because no one's software is ready because the pandemic has stopped? I'll tell you straight, the guaranteed launch games. If there was no pandemic, the guaranteed launch games for PS5 would have been FIFA 2021, NBA 2K21, Madden, Call of Duty. All the usual yearly games would have all been on there, but you just don't know what's happening with this pandemic. But I think with The Last of Us being delayed indefinitely, I think Sony will release it. I have a feeling that they'll say, look, it's coming out PS4 and PS5.
Mm-hmm.
I think there'll be a PS5 version up for it, and I think just to sweeten the deal, they'll be like, look, if you've bought the PS4 version, when you upgrade to PS5, eventually that version will, similar to what Xbox is already doing, but
the patches.
It'll be like it'll know it's in a PS5
definition.
machine, and it will do the PS5 version instead. But
Perfect.
I don't know. It's Sony. I mean, Halo is a huge get, and Microsoft. I wouldn't be surprised with Microsoft being as aggressive as they're gonna be, especially on the North American side of the market.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be. I think from a North American side, I think Xbox will lead the first year. But from a worldwide perspective, the same thing will happen. They'll get trounced in Europe. They'll get smashed in Asia, Middle East, everywhere. There's not one market around on this planet, with the exception of North America, where the Xbox contends with PlayStation if they launch at the same time. The only time they did is when they had a whole year and a half head start in the UK. And the gap was 5 million by the time the PS3 came out. And by the time the PS3 came out, it was way more expensive, had way less games, but they closed the gap over the generation, I think it finished only like a mil or a million and a half behind the 360, and think about how aggressive that 360 was.
Yeah, that was impressive. Yeah, I think I think we could see that. I think they're going to have way more machines at launch, and they will they'll potentially dominate the market share for the first 2 quarters, but then as Sony picks up again, and they'll just come back in obviously with a AAA game and just win a lot of fans back. But it's going to be a tough fight. I mean, we're looking at 2 consoles which are pretty much neck and neck in terms of the chipset anyway. But obviously PS5's got the advantage in terms of the speed. But I guess what's really going to show the difference will be the first party titles. And how they're actually going to be utilizing the power for that, because they're going to be the only ones who have the raw access to untap everything.
You know what I find really interesting is I think Sony will do what they did on PS4. Like, everybody started complaining when Watch Dogs and other games were shown at like 2 or 3 E3s before it even came out.
Right.
And everyone started complaining, why are you showing it too early? And then companies were showing it at E3 then and saying, right, it's out in 6 months. But then you had Sony who were like, nah, we're going to show you God of War 2 years before it comes out. We're going to show you Spider-Man 2 years before it comes out. They all come out, Horizon, and they all sell double digits in the millions, like ridiculous numbers. I think Sony will show I think they'll cover the cracks, and I think you'll see the 2021... The second wave of generation of PS5 games, I think you'll see them with the launch games in terms of like trailers and stuff. Mm-hmm. So I think when the PS5 is unveiled, you know what I think the first game's going to be?
Well,
it's going to be I think it's Spider-Man. I think they're going to show a new Spider-Man game.
They're going to show Spider-Man. You really think they're going to go for that straight out the gate?
I think the game launches holiday 2021. So I think full year and a half, year after launch it comes out. But when you show your machine, if Sony turn around, imagine they've got nothing at launch, right, except the third party. But if you showcase the machine in a State of Play digital event, and you're thinking, do I get an Xbox Series X or do I get a PS5? And they're showing off Halo Infinite, Gears 6, whatever. And then you come and say, here's Gran Turismo 7, here's the next God of War teaser trailer, oh, here's Spider-Man coming out next year, and here's Horizon 2. I'm like, yo, hello? You know what I mean? Like,
yes. But shut up and take my money.
Exactly. You know, and all they've got to do is drop teasers. You know, I mean, the one thing Sony have done really, really well on the PS4 generation is whenever they announce something, it's gameplay. They don't do CGI. That God of War, you saw it, bam. Like your first time you see God of War, it was like 20-minute demo. Horizon, 20-minute demo. Uncharted 4 demo. There was some trailers to Uncharted, but there was demos that followed it, you know. And I just think they're going to do the same thing again. I think you'll see teaser trailers before you see demos. But I think the next Batman game, the reason they haven't showed anything yet, I think it's tied to marketing exclusivity. So it can only be shown when Sony's ready to show it. And whoever shows that Batman game on their unveil of the new machine is massive.
It's gonna, it will be king, definitely. I can see that happening. As you said about the Spider-Man as well, I think, that's launching 2021 as well, for Homecoming 3, or whatever they're going to call it. So that'll time well. Definitely time well. But yeah, man, it's looking good either way.
Excellent. And listeners, this time we'll do it a little bit different. So if you go onto Twitter at latest PS5, you tell us what you want us to talk about next week. If you want us to talk about the Tempest 3D audio engine, we can talk about that. If you want us to talk about confirmed games like Godfall or something else, let us know what you think, and then me and Alex will study up and we will talk about that on the next episode. Until then, excellent. Until then, stay home, stay safe. Alex, you have the final word.
Peace out, y'all. And I know it's going to be a very hard time during this crazy pandemic, but the PS5 is coming. That'll be my final words.
Excellent. Good night, everyone.
All right, peace.
Hello, citizens of
PlayStation.
Users lose all sense of reality and enter another world.
Ridge Racer.